who are trying to start a company or thinking of starting a company who might need VC support? Okay, big crowd. All right, so myself is from Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, three kinds of people have large volume in there. One is startup companies, right? Startup CEOs, tech people. Second are VCs. The third, you may not know. They are lawyers like myself. So here we have three established VCs. We're going to talk about the recent trends in VC investment in the last year and how we are going to forecast maybe a little bit, even though it's very difficult, into next year. At the end, if we have some time left, maybe we're going to share some tips with the startups as to how you can raise money, how you can work with VCs. So let's start off. First, maybe each of you can give a little background about yourself. What kind of companies you invest in, what kind of technologies, the stage of the companies, and maybe a little personal background. So starting from William? Two Williams. Okay.
Okay, my name is William Lim. I represent WISKEY Capital. Basically, my fund is in Hong Kong, and my major the company I major invest is in China or in the United States. So, but the team probably in Taiwan, basically. So, the stage is focused on seed round until like A round, probably. Yeah. So, internet and medical device, medical solution, and material. FinTech is my major top focus. As for the next year, I think actually I'm not that positive on that. Yeah, so basically I think FinTech, as I was talking about inside stage, I think FinTech probably will be the important segmentation that we can put more patient on that. That's all.
Thank you.
Try and keep this short. So SOSV is the accelerator VC. I run two accelerators, one called China Accelerator, and today we launched MOX here at GMIC. We're a meta accelerator, so it's an accelerator program for companies of all stages, and we focus on taking startups cross-border. So MOX China Accelerator is the first accelerator in Asia, longest running, most successful, at least on paper. We just finished our 8th batch, and it's focused on helping companies enter the Chinese market and helping Chinese startups go global. MOX, which we announced today here at this conference, is based in Taiwan, but we take companies from around the world, including Taiwan, and we help them go into Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and South America in partnership with a Taiwan startup company called Gmobi that I invested in 4 years ago, pre-revenue. And they have a platform with 100 million users, mostly in Southeast Asia. So as part of the MOX program, we give unlimited free promotion into these 100 million users, as well as our payment SDK and ad SDK. So.
Great, thank you. Tony.
Hi guys, good afternoon. My name is Tony Wang. I'm the president of ThreeW and UCSC. What we do is we manage international student programs for several hundred high schools in the U.S. and Canada. We also do our second line of business is we do education collaboration between U.S. and China, and the third, of course, is investments. We typically like to invest in Series A companies for several reasons. One is we're uniquely, instead of career VCs who look at angel investors and angel investment opportunities and go up to volume, we typically like to focus on a few companies a year where we're after investments, we have the resources to help them. And we do more investments in the US and dabble a little bit in China as well.
Great. So before we go on, I have a few slides to share with the audience. Slides? The slides show, we are talking about big data today. Actually, the slides show some small data, some simple statistics about what happened in the last 12 months. What has gone up, what has gone down, and from there, maybe we can ask the panelists some questions. Okay, next slide, please. This is the list of our panelists. Next. This one shows the almost the last 2 years of VC funding. I think this is worldwide. You can see at the last 3 bars, and then compare that to the red line. The red line shows number of deals VCs made in the last 20 months. And then the blue bar shows the total amount of money put into startups. The red line actually has plateaued in the last few quarters, but the blue ones actually went up quite a bit. That means that the number of deals went down, but each deal actually attracted more money. Next one. This one actually compares the same information, but between different continents. You can see that by number of deals between Europe, Asia, and the US, it's kind of flat. However, if you look at the money put into the investment, in the US, it went up a little bit. In Europe, it's more flat. In Asia, you can see this interesting curve. My guess is that in the first quarter of 2015, because of the Chinese stock market turbulence, some of the investment didn't actually happen, but which happened in the next quarter.
Sorry, I don't think this numbers include China, because in the first half of 2015, China VC was 15 billion, and I don't think China is all of Asia.
I see.
So yeah, China's been pretty crazy in the first half of this year.
Interesting.
Just heads up.
Oh, so this small data may not be very accurate.
Yeah.
Next one. This one shows that the valuation of startups actually went up, gone up quite a lot. You can see from 2 years ago, the average valuation is about $29 million, but right now it's almost $70 million per company. Next one. The overall time it takes for VC investment to exit is a little longer now, and that's probably because of the slow IPO market this year. Next one. And then this is the chart of investors, VC's confidence rating. You see that in the US and China, the confidence actually went up the most, which I don't know whether you guys can comment on this later. Is that really consistent with your understanding? Next one. This is another chart showing the major industry areas where VCs have highest confidence. The number one take-home message is that mobile internet is still number one. IoT is coming up. But the most interesting and the most increase came from mobile health and robotics. Next. We can spend maybe a little more time later on this slide that shows the increase of crowdfunding to startups. On the top, this yellow round circles show the total volume from crowdfunding. And then at the lower panel, it shows distribution between different funding. The longest bar actually is for loans, which basically means that the consumers put money into the startup. In return, they may get some money back or get a product. That is the dramatic, big portion of that investment. Next. The final slide shows the current changes of VC versus crowdfunding and angels. Angel is kind of flat. VC is going up, but crowdfunding is going up a lot. Is that going to be a challenge to VCs? We'll see in a minute. So now, that is the end. Go back to the panelists. So first, any comments about crowdfunding? Is that going to be a challenge, or is that part of your kind of collaboration?
I think crowdfunding is an opportunity, but for funding for companies and startups, it's still very, very small in the scheme of things. I mean, if you look at the last chart, lending is the vast majority of it. And I read a report the other day saying that lending, 80% of the P2P lending in the world is in China because they don't have consumer credit. They don't have small, medium business loans. So crowdfunding has sort of stepped in to fill that gap. So the vast majority of it is not for startups. I think there's an opportunity there with AngelList and our crowd, and a number of these platforms are doing very well, and we're definitely partnering, looking at partnering with a number of them, but still small.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the crowdfunding in the U.S. has really taken off well, a little bit better than China has in the last couple of years. In China, as you know, it's gotten very, very hot to the point where I think there's a lot of practices that are not standard or mature. So it'd be interesting to see how the government regulates that and makes that more of a, try to shape that into more of a regulated industry.
So I do internet, but my sister or brother accelerator is called HAX Accelerator, or HAX is the top hardware accelerator in the world, and they're very heavy into crowdfunding. So I think they've done a total of like 80 companies, and 75, 76 have had successful crowdfunding campaigns. So for hardware, it's had a huge impact. Internet, not so much.
Yes, and I totally agree with William saying, talking about that. I think the industry have also different situations. Like if you in the healthcare industry, or probably in like I just talking about fintech, the crowdfunding behavior is different. So that would be another observation.
Well, excellent. I also heard that part of the money in the crowdfunding actually is from VCs. So it doesn't really mean that there's much crowdfunding going on. However, from a lawyer's perspective, I have recently seen some legislation, proposed legislation in the US regulating crowdfunding. Well, regulating sounds limiting, but in the end, actually, it promotes a healthy crowdfunding from the mass. Now next, let's see. Well, actually, William has touched upon this topic a little earlier in his introduction. If you can pick one area for next year, it's forecasting, which is very, very difficult. You don't have to be right in the end. We're not going to come back and attack you, but pick one area which you think you may want to look further and maybe try some investment next year. What's that?
Well, I agree with William. I think fintech is an area of huge opportunity. I mean, in the past, you had telecom carriers. They're big, they're fat, they're slow, and they're basically ripe for disruption. The banks are the new telco carriers. And you've got, if you look at how much money, VC money is going into mobile over the last like 5 years, it's massive. The amount of VC money that's going into fintech is not huge, but it's growing very, very quickly. So VCs are voting with their money, and they're going to disrupt the financial sector.
If you can pick one technical area for your investment next year.
For next year, what would you bet on?
Like
industry, sector.
Well, I tend to focus on industries, like I like education myself. I like, if I had to pick one, it would probably be companies that use a good integration of, the community and also something that can monetize. So, yesterday we were looking at companies that, I know the Mogujie is here, that is a very kind of a tribal e-commerce site. I think we look at a couple of exhibitions here in Taiwan, actually, there have companies that have done that, which has produces a lot of content, builds a little bit of community, but also has an expert base, as well as merchandise that can kind of commercialize instead of just going, pure TMT and social networking, and the other side of it, just doing e-commerce. I think that side of it, in the US, we've seen a great number of examples of that. In China, we haven't seen. We're starting to see them pop up a little bit. So I think that in the next year will probably be a hot thing.
Thank you. So now, maybe a question for the audience. Taiwan has been very strong in hardware in the last few decades, and then but relatively smaller for consumers. So if you are going to pick a company startup in Taiwan to invest in, what might be the most attractive startup to you? If you have to invest in one now, today, pick one.
So I just started, we launched our MOX accelerator today. I just agreed to invest in a company about 5 minutes ago. It's not signed yet, so I won't say. But basically what we're looking for is companies with good product, solid users, good metrics, and that we can take into other markets. So they've got their product market fit pretty much down, but they're ready to go global. And for us, we're very much focused on mobile here. I'm on the internet side, I don't do hardware, so for mobile, it's a lot of consumer-driven apps.
With a global
and we'll take them into Southeast Asia as a major focus, but also Eastern Europe and South America. So our shopping lists, if you look at your phones and the first 2 screens, you see what's on there. We're shopping for 1 or 2 of each of these. Well, we have 100 million phones, so if you get an app and you have 100 million users, it suddenly becomes a very valuable company.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool. If you need me to choose one in Taiwan, I think probably.
What kind of startup?
Yeah, probably because I come from healthcare industry, so I think maybe mobile health will be one of the topic that currently Taiwan can do more focus about that, because in healthcare industry or the hospital service, I think Taiwan has some advantage so far. So, and by the way, the hardware device in the supply chain in Taiwan is very complete. So I think mobile health probably the other one, if I have to choose one. Yeah.
To answer the question, I think I like companies that are uniquely positioned to enter the mainland, obviously. And that Taiwan, I think, is really interesting because it has a unique advantage is people who are sophisticated and kind of create a supply for content or for know-how that can be easily scaled into China. You know, in the US, when we look at companies, we say, okay, what companies can potentially synergize with things that are going on in China? You try to look for things that are tech-based, or you try to look for things that are easier to leverage across a language barrier. But in Taiwan, it's very interesting because that most of the content that's produced using the sophistication based in, especially healthcare and education, which I think are really hot industries, they're creating content and know-how that's easily scalable into the mainland. The cultural barrier is so small. So if you find a product or a team that can cater to that demand and you create supply here based in China or based in Taiwan and satisfy some of that consumption demand, I think there's huge opportunities there.
Now basically it's advertisement for GMIC in Beijing next year. So if you want to open your app to Chinese market, you better go there and attend GMIC in Beijing, right? Do we still have the GMIC, GWC people in here? Okay, maybe we can open the panel the floor to the audience. If you have any questions to the VC guys over here, raise your hand. Otherwise, at any time. And then now we can continue in here. Now, if you have any comments about the trend, we can talk about that. But since we have some time left, let's maybe share with your experience working with startups. So what kind of startup entrepreneur you may be most interested? What kind of personal characteristics or what kind of business plan you would like to see? Maybe first one. What kind of business proposal, what kind of slides you want to see? Do you want to see slides or do you want to see a live demo? How do you want to have the first meeting with a startup company? Do you have anything to share with our startups? Tony?
I'm not super stuck on ceremony. They can draw it on a paper napkin if they want, as long as the idea is clearly communicated. I think everyone has their, every career VC has their own investment rationale. I typically like to look at the industry or the track, so-called, they're on, and the business model kind of as the same thing to see, okay, if they can execute on this on a big scale, does it, will consumer buy it? Is there a big enough market for something like this? The second is I look at, is the team that's in place, at least today, instead of the vision stuff, it's just the team today can execute on something at least for the next 2 years, can sustain that growth in a way that's meaningful. The third is obviously you kind of assess the macro risks of where the track is going and who the potential, whether it's on the policy side or on the market side. And the fourth is competition. I think, especially in Asia, or I guess in the US as well, you look at early stage companies, a lot of entrepreneurs who haven't entrepreneured before assume there's no competition. So you have to really figure out a way and say, okay, who is going to be coming in to compete with you? Because the companies that's raising angel money and Series A money, the competition they face now is not necessarily going to be the same competitors when they get a Series B and Series C. So, you know, you at least have to kind of play it out until just before C and say, okay, can this team or can this company try to compete against up to that point? And then, you know, that was kind of my rationale for, or logic for investing.
William?
So we do mostly early stage. The team is the most important. So we generally look for co-founders, 2 co-founders, 3 is possible, 1's generally bad. There's a lot of Chinese companies with single founder teams, but outside of China, we really look for multiple co-founders. We look for founders that are slightly...
What kind of combination you want to see between the different partners?
Sorry?
What kind of combination? Do you have any specific?
Well, usually there's tech
and
product, and the ability to sell something. So you need to have at least 2 of those, and if you don't have tech, it's a bit of a problem. So usually tech plus product or tech plus the ability to sell. We also look for people who are slightly insane but not crazy. You've got to be pretty crazy to do a startup, because you're putting all your eggs into one basket. You're trying to do something that's never been done before. You don't take a salary. You're working like, you know, 90 hours a week. And you're probably going to fail. So the key thing for us and why we do an accelerator is over the 3 months, we actually figure out whether they're completely insane, because that can be a problem. So, and then in terms of the product, we focus on the problem, not so much the product, okay? So the problem is probably more important. The product is going to change over time. But we look at the problem, and does the team have an unfair advantage in solving this problem? You know, startup land is not fair. Business is not fair. So what's your unfair advantage? Why are you the guys and girls who are going to you know, kill this market?
Because I come from the WISKEY capital, and my capital is more focused on the team member or the founder. They are really focused on the human being, how to do the best to do good for next generation or generation to generation. So I think the founder will be the ethical founder. I think that will be very important things, or first thing I will looking at. So if the founder is not that good or try to do some legal things, I probably will not invest that.
Any questions from the audience now? Yes?
Can you share the biggest failure investment case with us, and also what did you learn from the failure experience? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so one failure and one success. Okay, so really quickly, how about I just do failure? My first startup was a total and complete failure. I made every stupid mistake possible. So I did 3 different things instead of 1 thing. I was actually a part-time CEO. That's the stupidest thing you can do. Yeah, it was a complete mess. The smartest thing I did is after 1 year, shut it down. Fired my 10 staff, and basically realized that I'm not a very good CEO. The second startup did much better, and I was not the CEO, much better at enabling other people than you know, leading a company myself. So it helps me give advice to other CEOs and other teams because I made a lot of stupid mistakes.
Well, I have actually a story to share to that end. I have a client actually who are very crazy. They were 2 PhD students from Stanford. And then when they graduated, they went to pitch at this a few PayPal co-founders, and they have a fund called Founders Fund. And then they got $2 million just because they are so smart. They're so crazily smart, and then they're doing something that is in life science. They were designing DNA computers to treat disease. To me, who has some life science background, that is impossible to work. But the PayPal guys actually they like it. It sounds very exciting. They give $2 million to the two guys. 3 years later, they kind of figured out this is not going to work. However, in the process, they were able to automate every single thing in a life science lab. Now, they are providing that lab on the cloud. So every pharmaceutical company can send samples to their lab and automate the entire lab thing on the lab, actually on the cloud. Now they have a very viable business. They raised another $20 million last year. They're doing very well. So to me, that is a failure plus success story. So using Steve Jobs' famous saying, stay foolish. Sometimes, I think, as you said, the team is the most important. They are crazy, but they can really carry out their missions. They can do things very well. That's my story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, starting up is like slamming your head into the wall over and over and over again. And success is usually generated by you not giving up and keeping on hitting the wall with your head. So, I mean, one of our companies you guys have, yeah? I can give one, but.
A success story.
Success story, okay. My first startup is after I graduated from university. I think it's quite good because I sell out is about travel agent online at that time, and that is quite good. We sell the database out, so that is quite a success. And the other thing is we go further for the payment company, payment solution. But at that time, the people don't know what the payment online concept. So that's why we failed. So sometimes I think the trend is very important that when you start ideas or start business, you have to look in at what kind of environment you have and what kind of resources you have. That's what I learned from that.
Yeah, failure as an entrepreneur, I think before I started the iteration of this company, I failed at a bunch of different startups really fast and in good quantity. And this one, luckily, it's gone well. In the last 5 years, we've gone from 1 school to 200. So we've enjoyed some traction there. In terms of investments, because we don't do a lot, we like to just look at a few every year, or go into a few, look at a lot, go into a few every year. The biggest failure is probably a company which I won't mention right now. Is kind of a zombie company that is making kind of money, but it's kind of basically turned into a lifestyle business. And I think that the lessons learned is really, do you have the kind of entrepreneur that can kind of put the teams together to keep iterating to take the companies through the different stages of growth. Sort of a success company, I guess, would be, I think Aploy is a good example of that in the U.S. They're 2 years into this iteration of their company. They're probably, north of $100 million in valuation right now. It's a tech company that does recruiting for U.S. companies that's based out in New York. In that instance, I think the team has been one that is very good to listen. Is always learning. Is always trying different things and iterating very quickly in its methods and as well as its product.
Excellent. So next question, actually, this question is rarely asked to VCs, but I think it's very common. Many aspiring entrepreneurs have this question. If you have a good idea, you need a partner. How do you find a good partner, and how do you convince the partner to join you? Is there any kind of tips you can share with the audience? Maybe just 30 seconds.
I think I will pick up the people that I have to work with before and try to, because you have to do some deep observation, his behavior all the time, and maybe that would be the partner I would pick up.
I mean, if you can't convince somebody else to work with you, then you're probably not very good at selling. And you shouldn't probably be in business in the first place. So that's why we like co-founders. Also, if you're so greedy, you're not willing to give up a significant amount of stock to your partner, you're also probably not going to be very good to work with.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a skill that can be taught. I think, as you guys probably see, that mostly the entrepreneur either they've got it or they don't, right? If they're have the ability to communicate their ideas and their vision and has the passion. And obviously the idea has to make sense to convince others to join your team in a way that is meaningful. And if they can't, it's usually one of those things that's not there. So that's something that either the idea doesn't make sense or the person just doesn't have that kind of leadership skills to bring the team together. So that's something that I think is a skill that, at least at this age, is either, by the time they're starting a company, it can't be taught. It's either they've already got it by then or they don't.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing very insider information. And our time is up. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.